as those of you who may have listened to me before know, I tend to think a lot about social issues, and particularly like the divisiveness that we have in our country, but in the world today. And one of the obvious topics of that is COVID, but there's plenty of social issues that could apply. And I was thinking about it today, and let's just use the example of COVID to illustrate it, but I think it applies more broadly. I kept coming back to this concept that really I don't like, I guess. The concept is, or the phrase I would use is, some people seem to hate other people, other groups, other ideologies more than they love the truth. I want to say that again for myself as well as for you guys, because it's one of those that either sounds confusing and is like, what the fuck's he talking about? Or maybe it's deep and insightful, or maybe it's stupid. I don't know. Some people hate other people more than they love the truth. And I think that's a problem, obviously, right? If that statement is true, we can't be okay with that, right? And again, let's use COVID to illustrate it, right? And I'm going to do both sides because I don't want this to be like, oh, this side's right or this side's wrong. That's actually exactly the opposite of what I'm trying to do. But let's start with a person who is more liberal, more progressive, maybe. And when it comes to COVID, they're more adamant that like, we need to be vaccinated, we need to wear masks, we need to apply social distancing, we need to really take this serious. I wonder, for some of those people, and there's definitely people like this out there, we see some politicians, some media figures, and maybe people we know in everyday life, who appear, even as the science comes in and maybe gives us new information or tells us maybe the pandemic's not as bad as we thought it is now, right? It's starting to get better. Or maybe the masks don't work as well as they thought they did. It appears as if there's some people that hate people on the other side so much that they hate them more than they're willing to accept the truth that maybe the science is evolving, or maybe things are changing, maybe things are getting better, because they're so afraid that if they admit maybe the masks, maybe, right? I'm just using an example. Maybe the masks don't work as well as we thought they did, the cloth masks. Or maybe now the Omicron variant isn't as dangerous anymore and we don't have to be as on guard. If they admit that, there's a chance that other fucking person is gonna gloat and they're gonna be like, see, you fucking liberal, whatever, you live in an idealistic world, you're trying to be a Nazi, you're trying to ruin the country, and now you see we were right all along. And they're so afraid of that because they hate that person or that group and that ideology so much that it's more important to them to not give them the satisfaction than it is to focus on the truth. And as I said, this cuts both ways, absolutely, on multiple topics. I could flip the whole scenario and take a person who typically tends to be more conservative, Republican, whatever you want to call it, who doesn't think the pandemic's that big of a deal, who doesn't think we should be wearing masks, who doesn't think that the data or whatever suggests any of the stuff that we need, the lockdowns or anything like that. And if information does come in that like, hey, more people are dying or more stuff's happening, or maybe there's a certain type of mask that does work and we'd be better, or maybe the vaccines do work and they are effective and we should consider pushing them more. Same thing, right? They hate that other side more than they love the truth. The idea of admitting that maybe something wasn't what they thought and we should be more concerned, they can't admit that because they're too afraid that other side is going to be like, see, we told you we knew better. We told you we were better people and we cared more about people. And they can't have it. They cannot have it because they hate that other side more than they love the truth. And as I say this, right, it's easy to take it as an indictment on the person that I'm saying hates the other side more than they love the truth. And that's fair, right? Because especially for me, the truth needs to be the story. The truth needs to be our guiding light to the extent we can get to it. But the onus, the responsibility, the fault, if you will, to me sits on both sides, right? Because it feeds off each other. The reason that one side hates that other side so much and is so worried about admitting that they might be right about something is because the other side typically does like to gloat, does like to rub their face in it, right? And vice versa. And somehow we have to break that cycle. This idea that we hate people more than we love the truth. I mean, we could stop right there, that we hate people. That, to me, that's not functional. That's not useful. Hating other people, right? I get it. There's some people that do some stupid shit in the world. There's some people that are maybe bad people or at least act in bad ways. I get why we need to address that. We need to fix it. We need to be better. But hate is, to me, just not functional. It doesn't serve that purpose in any means. But when you hate somebody more than you love the truth, you have to really look yourself in the mirror and say, geez, where is that going to lead? What good outcome could possibly come from that? And listen, I'm sure I'm guilty of it at times. I'm sure I have been. I'm sure I will be again. We all are. We're humans. We're flawed. The key to this thing, as I often say, is the humility to acknowledge, to entertain the idea that, you know what? Maybe I am doing that sometimes. Maybe I do fall into that category where I hate that other side, right? That group, that ideology so much that I hate them more. I hate the idea of them being right more than I love the idea of figuring out the truth. And if we can kind of just accept the idea that we might be falling into that, maybe we can do something about it. Maybe we can fix it. But we have to have the humility to accept that maybe we're doing that first. And hopefully, to end this divisiveness and all this hate that is spewing around, we can kind of get ourselves around to it. Hopefully.